Hi everybody. So the first step we're going to do, I can't get my full cut on film because my table is just not big enough. I'm doing the long version of the T cardigan. So I have my back piece here and I'm just going to get my front pieces and just apply them right sides together. I'm using this awesome fabric from Bubble Baby Custom Fabrics. It's going to be available for pre-order soon. So, sewing that up today. I'm very excited about this. Okay, so I'm just going to put my front pieces right sides together. And then we're going to sew along these shoulder seams using a 1/4 inch seam allowance. So I will do that and I'll be back. This is a beautiful French terry. I'm very excited about this cardigan. Okay, so now I'm ready to sew on my sleeves. So to do that, I'm going to put my sleeve right side together. Make sure you're grabbing a right sleeve because the sleeve does have a front and a back. So make sure you're matching up the notches or fabric markings, however you transferred that over. Make sure you're matching those up. So the middle one on the middle of your sleeve is going to match the seam here, the top shoulder seam. So I will clip those together. And then you're just gonna match these ones here. And then finally your end. I'm gonna do that to the other side. And my end. Perfect. Everything matches perfectly. So I'm going to go ahead and use a 1/4 inch seam allowance to sew that on, and I will be back. So I've gone ahead and sewed my sleeves on and everything's really starting to come together now. Next step would be, if you're adding the pockets, to go ahead and add those. I will not be adding pockets to mine, but if I were, then this is what I would do. The pocket basically would go on the outer part like this, and that's how it would look. So you could choose a coordinating fabric or a different color fabric to do the pocket if you wanted. So basically what you would do is just use the hem allowance, which is a 1/2 inch, and hem that. And then we would place it here and sew it in. So this part would be sewn into the band and this part would be sewn into your side seam. Make this a little bit. This part would be sewn into your side seam, so there'd be no raw edges, and then you'd have this nice big pocket here, which would actually be very convenient. So the next step would be to sew our side seams. So let's turn everything right sides together. So here's my arm, and this is going to be down to the front of my cardigan. So what I want to do, let's see if I get this all in the camera shot, is I want to sew up the arm and down the cardigan. If you were installing those pockets, the pocket would be sandwiched in between your front and your back bodice pieces. It would be sewn in right here if you were doing your pocket. So since I'm not doing that, I'm just going to take that piece out. And then I'm going to go ahead and use a 1/4 inch seam allowance, and I'm going to do this to both sides, and I will be back. So I've gone ahead and sewed the side seams of my cardigan. So it's all set up here. So next I'm going to work on the band. So I have my two side pieces here, And what I need to do is put them right sides together and sew the short end. Okay, so I have them right sides together. I'm going to go ahead and use a 1/4 inch seam allowance and sew those together, and I'll be back. Okay, so I've gone ahead and done that. So if you're sewing the T version, then you're going to want to get your 3rd piece and sew it one side to the end and one side to the other end so that it's a big circle. Make sure that you're doing right sides together, so I like to put it on the table and go like this. So I know it's not twisted. And then I'll put this one right side together like that. And I will sew there using a 1/4 inch seam allowance. So I'll do that and I will be back. And what I'm going to do before I move on to the next step is I'm just going to mark my first seam that I did so I know which one goes where. Okay. So now that I'm making sure none of this is twisted on this side, I'm going to make sure none of this is twisted on this side. And then I'm going to join these two together and sew that using a 1/4 inch seam allowance. So then I've created basically a big circle. I'm going to do that and I'll be back. Okay. So here is my big circle that I've created. This mark is going to mark my center back. So I'm going to go ahead and get ready to attach this. First, I want to put everything, fold everything in half. So I'm going to do that. And I'll finish this up and then I will be back. So I've gone ahead and folded everything in half and clipped it. And then I just double clipped where my top center is. And next we need to attach it to our cardigan. And I'm going to mark the center of my cardigan. Okay. Okay. So this is the top of my cardigan on this side, and this is the bottom. So I'm just going to start with the top first. So I have my top center marked here, and then I have my top center double marked on this one. So we're going to put everything right sides together. Okay. So I've clipped it all around, making sure my top was in the top middle, and then my bottom seams lined up with each other. And now I'm going to go ahead and use a 1/4 inch seam allowance and sew that on. I'll be back. So I have my bands all sewn on, and now I'm ready to do my sleeves. So if you're doing the banded option, since there's two different sleeve styles, you could have done the I did the relaxed fit sleeve, so I'll be hemming mine. But if you did the slim fit sleeve, then you'll be doing bands. So to apply the sleeve cuffs, we want to get our cuff laid out. You have the two long sides here and the two short sides here. You want to fold it in half so that your short sides meet each other, right sides together. And then you want to fold it the other way one time. Okay, so my short ends are meeting, and then I want to put my fabric that way. So now I want to use my 1/4 inch seam allowance and sew along the raw edges, making sure I'm catching all four fabrics. So I'll do that and I'll be back. So I've gone ahead and done that. So now what I want to do is just flip my fabric over like that, and now I have my cuff. And then when I'm applying my cuff, I have my raw edges here and the raw edges of my sleeve here. I'm just going to open this up and put my sleeve through, and I'm going to match up my seams and my raw edges. Okay, and now I'm just going to sew around my sleeve to sew that on using a 1/4 inch seam allowance, and I will be back. So I've gone ahead and sewn that on. I would just need to tie off my edges since I used a serger, but I'll go ahead and fold out my sleeve, and there it is. If you're not doing the bands, then you're going to be hemming like I am. So the hem, you're going to want to do 1 inch hem. Okay. I can't find my hem measure, so I'm using this ruler for now. So we're gonna pin that down all around using our 1 inch.